All right, let's jump right into it. For these first few tutorials, I'm going to be running an app called Code Runner. It's only available for Mac. If you don't have access to that, there's a bunch of other sites that can run Swift online. There's this one called Repellent, pretty good. Um, I just tried it out for a little bit, but it works, so you'll be able to follow along at least. Um, okay, let's jump right into it. So this is just going to be a basic introduction to what programming is in the Swift programming language. Um, so to start off, we're just going to talk about some variables. So variables are super simple. Let's just say var for variable I, and we'll say equals 4. So simple as that. We can print it out, print I, and run it. And you can see it prints out 4. We can do var j equals 1. And let's just show that really quickly. So 1, and then we can do something simple like I plus j. The answer, probably pretty obvious, is going to be 5, and prints out 5. So these are variables. With variables, they can change. So we can say I equals 5. So I is now going to equal 5. J is still 1. So we should see 6 in the console. There we go, 6 right here. Now, Swift has a distinction between var and constants. To denote a constant, you just say let. So that's basically telling the compiler that, hey, this thing's not going to be able to change. It's always going to stay the same throughout your program. If we try to run this, we should get an error. Value I is a let constant. Basically, change it to var so it can be mutable. Mutable means like to mutate or change. So that would be illegal. So if we make it a let I equals 4, var j equals 1, I plus j, and that works out. So the thing is about these are numbers to you, but to the programming language, these are actually integers. So int signifies an integer. So what I did over here, this is what's known as a comment. You can put comments pretty much anywhere. You can't really put it in the middle of any code because then that becomes, the rest of the line becomes a comment. But comments are useful for when you're documenting your code, for when you come back to it. You can see what it's doing. The way Swift works, without getting too deep into it, it tries to figure out automatically what kind of variable it is. So integer is the type. So I is a variable, or is a constant with type integer or int. The Swift compiler also decides that j should be an integer as well because it doesn't have any decimal points. So if we run it, it still works. Now, if we wanted to do a decimal, which would be 1.0, this wouldn't work because the Swift compiler automatically tries to turn it into a different type. In this case, it tries to turn it into a type called double. So double is just basically, think of decimal, D for double, D for decimal. We also have another one, var f, which would be a float. So a float is pretty much the same thing. It's the same thing as a double for the most part. Lower down, we don't really have to get into this right now, but double basically holds twice the amount of data that a float does. Don't really have to worry about that right now, but that's why it's called a double. Double is normally the go-to, unless you know that whatever you're gonna put into your variable is gonna be a relatively small number compared to what a double can use. You can just keep it as a float, but doubles are pretty good. So we'll keep it as double just because it's a standard. As you noticed, that integer and double are not compatible. So if we wanted to add these two numbers together, we'd have to make them both doubles, and then that works. And you see in the console, it prints out 5.0. So that's a good start. Now, a couple of things that we can do. Say we're doing a graph, and the graph has axis x, y, z. We can just say something like var x equals 0, y equals 0, and z equals 0. So this is what's called a declaration. These are all declarations where we're saying like variable x, y, z equals some number. So we're totally telling them what we want to assign the values of. So we're just going to print x, and then you can see 0.0 printed out, and y printed out. And right now, as you saw earlier, these are all doubles. So we can do this. We can denote the type. This isn't necessary in Swift. In some languages, you have to explicitly say like type equals this before you can create the variable. But for Swift, it pretty much handles that for us. And we can just keep moving forward through this. We also have a concept of strings. Strings are text. So var text equals hello. And if we print this out, text, we should expect to see hello right here. So we can also assign it as a string, and string hello, it's doing the same exact thing as it was before, but I'm just showing you how you can assign the type explicitly. This here is your variable name. I didn't really get into this, but this gives me pretty much whatever you want it to be, as long as you use it the same way throughout. We usually try to keep variable names as descriptive as possible. So using just like single letters I, J, X, Y, Z, it's not really good when it comes to actually programming and software that people are constantly writing and trying to update, because it makes it really hard to figure out exactly what that variable is created for. So we're going to change this text here to greeting. So let's print out the greeting. It's the same thing as it was before, hello. And we can say var, let's actually make these lets because we're not going to change them. But let greeting equals hello, let name equals world, and hello, print name, perfect, run it, hello world gets printed out. So we're going to go ahead and make hello world in Swift, let's use a variable greeting, comma, name, and put an exclamation point. So you see hello world gets printed out. So what I did here, I did a backslash, which signifies an escape character, and two parentheses that wrap around the variable name. So greeting right here. And then it's basically going to create a string. We can just say let text equals name, and then print text. So you see that. So greeting, name, and it prints it out. So very simple. Last thing I wanted to show you for this is how we create our first function. So a function is something that we can reuse over and over again. So a function would be called greet. You usually like to use verbs for your function names. And then we can say name, and which would be a type string that we're expecting. So I'm creating a function called greet that takes in a string, one variable, and that variable is a string. And then when I use that variable, it's going to be under the word name. So this name here is different than this previous name. So I'm just going to say world for here just so you can see that really quickly. So this is a different name than the name that was before. And for this, I'm going to take this line of text from up here and print up in here. So I'm going to take in a name, hello name. I'm going to change this back to name. And then the greeting would be, let me just comment this out. So this code above isn't going to be ran. Let's like greeting, let's take this up here. Take greeting. So greeting is going to be hello still. So we're going to have the greeting. We're going to have the name. And we're going to hope that this function prints out the hello whoever's name. So to try that, I'm going to say greet. And then you can see CodeRunner pretty much IDE support. It supports autocomplete. So greet name, and then it's going to say name, and it expects the type string. So we can say something like Aaron, and let's run that. So just going back to what we expect to happen, we expect the 5 to get printed out for I and J, and then expect Y to get printed out. And also, we expect this greet function to run this code in here and print out greet Aaron. So when we run that, we get the 5, we get the 0, and hello Aaron. And we can add more greet Caden. So greet Caden gets printed out, excuse me, and greet Caden gets printed out. So every time the greet function is ran and passed with a name, a new name gets printed out. So greet world. World, I cannot spell. So hello world. And just to prove that to you, I'm going to add a breakpoint. So basically, when I run this program, it's just going to stop every time it hits this line of code. So run it. So I can see the program's waiting to stop. It's starting the debugger. It has to warm up a little bit. So it's paused here. You can see right here. And we stopped at this line of code. And I press play, and the Aaron gets printed out. Hello, Aaron. So now we just called this function, hello, Caden, and we expect it to print out Caden. You can see that right here in CodeRunner with the name. It's referencing this name right here. Name, Caden. Next one is Caden. And then world gets printed out. Excuse me. So that's about it for this little introduction to variables. We talked about doubles, we talked about floats, different types, strings, and a quick introduction to functions. So please follow along with that and let me know how it goes. Thank you.